5 books and counting. The Tales from the Omni Vault continues to expand as a universe. Go ahead and check the links down in the description to get your copies today. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni Viewer, and before I get into the main meat of this video, I'd like to take a moment to just thank Dr. Skipper for uniting the Godzilla fandom in a way that few people ever have before. I mean, really. He managed to bring everyone, regardless of which movie they think is great or where they stand on human characters in the movies or whatever, and brought us all together to unanimously agree that he made one of the worst bad faith Godzilla videos on the whole internet. A part of me actually wants to see him make a follow-up because I'm really curious to know how he would reconcile his repeated mantra of always do your research with the multiple things that he gets just plain wrong. Then again, if that did happen, I would have to sit through another video that was edited by a hyperactive squirrel that ate twice its body weight in sugar. So maybe I'm not that curious. But this video is not about that. I think plenty of people have already gotten the idea at this point. What I'd instead like to talk about is the upcoming film Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, images of which are already beginning to grace my studio, and how I intend to approach it. I would encourage other people to approach it a similar way, but, you know, I can't control anyone, so I'm just going to explain why I'm taking this approach, and you can do with that information what you will. Now, what I mean when I say how I'm going to approach it is that I'm not going to approach the movie by comparing it to Godzilla -1, which people have been doing pretty much from the onset. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere in doing that. Now, I know many of you have sharp memories and are going to think, wait a minute, aren't you the same guy who made multiple videos comparing Shin Godzilla to other Godzilla movies, including Godzilla 2014? Why are you saying that about this now? Well, yes, I stand by those videos, but I'm going to explain why I took that approach before I explain why I'm not taking that approach with this upcoming film. Yes, during my initial batch of videos about Shin Godzilla and why I don't think it's the masterpiece that people claim it is, one of the videos I made compared it to Godzilla 2014, which for the sake of brevity I'm going to be referring to as G14 henceforth, at least for this video. So I made that video, and I knew that there were people who said that such a comparison was not prudent. One particular argument I recall that stood out from another internet personality was that comparing Shin to G14 was like comparing an orange to the Death Star because they're both round. If there were only superficial similarities between the two films, like the whole being round thing, then maybe I would agree. But having watched both of those films multiple times, I felt that they actually had far more in common than a lot of people thought. That video in particular opens by stating that there are a lot of shared criticisms between the two films. People who like G14 will often criticize Shin Godzilla for the exact same things that people who like Shin criticize G14 about. And even beyond that, there are other similarities. Yes, there are differences. Shin doesn't have any kaiju fights because there are no kaiju other than Godzilla. Godzilla is framed as a hero in G14, things like that. But when you put them side by side, similarities and parallels do stand out. They're both hard reboots with no connection to previous films. They're both serious in tone. They both have limited screen time for the title character, which means they are both human-driven stories, and the humans are comprised of an ensemble cast. Things like that. Their military aesthetics and everything. I felt that there were enough things in common between them that a comparison was warranted. In fact, you could even argue that Shin was a direct response to G14 because, well, Toho has stated multiple times that the only reason they're now making their own Godzilla movies domestically is because the American movies are being made and doing relatively well. Yes, I know. Shin technically began pre-production in 2013, but that doesn't really make a difference because G14 began pre-production in 2010, and Shin wasn't even officially announced until after G14 did well at the box office. It was like Toho was waiting to see how that movie would do before they officially greenlit this thing. If G14 had flopped, maybe that Ava guy's script got thrown into the incinerator. Happens all the time, who knows why, but oh well, no more Godzilla movies. Plus, when they made that announcement, they specifically stated that they felt the time had come to show the world what a quote-unquote real Godzilla movie looked like. That was the exact statement made at the very beginning. A statement like that invites comparison. So, again, I felt it was prudent to compare these films. And of course, I would also compare Shin to the original 1954 Gojira recently. But you may notice I'm staying along a very particular track when I choose to compare Shin to other movies. I certainly did analyze Shin on its own, but when it came to drawing parallels and showing, well, here's a movie that I believe did it better, I did stick in very specific confines. And that, I think, is prudent to the discussion going forward. Like I said, I compared Shin to movies like the original Gojira or G14, even occasionally branching off into The Return of Godzilla. Movies that Shin was comparable to because there were similarities that could be drawn. I didn't compare Shin to stuff like Godzilla vs. Megalon, or Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, or movies such as that. I didn't compare it to the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla cartoon, because there really were no parallels to draw there other than the fact that Godzilla happens to be in all of them. Shin is too different from those other works. And I feel the same thing is going on with Godzilla -1 and Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. At this point, we know what kind of a film -1 is, and it's phenomenal. In fact, I don't think anyone expected it to be as big of a hit as it was. I mean, I was on a live stream with other G fans, and this was before, like a month or so before Godzilla -1 hit theaters. And we were all just sitting there going, yeah, it'll probably do okay, I guess. I mean, obviously we're all fans, we're gonna go see it, other fans are gonna see it, we'll drag our families or whatever under protest to see it with us. Maybe it'll get extended for another week like Shin did, but we're really not expecting much. And then the movie wound up doing so well that it wound up running in American theaters for over 2 months. I mean, Shin didn't have that happen. Most limited release anime films, Shin Ultraman, Shin Kamen Rider, those didn't get that kind of treatment. And yet -1 did. That's how well received it was, because it's a great movie. In fact, it's the kind of movie that I honestly kind of thought people had forgotten how to make. Or at the very least, people who remembered how to make them would never get them greenlit by a studio because they'd be considered too risky, whatever the heck that means. Yet here we are in a world where -1 did so well that it kind of broke into the mainstream. All those people who are saying that the movie put Hollywood to shame in 2023, I know there are some of you who want to believe that's just grifting, but it's not. It's the truth. -1 is way better than the majority of output from Hollywood. Yes, there have been good movies throughout the year 2023, and there are probably going to be others, but like they're so spread out, and the movies that you would expect Godzilla -1 to keep the company of, stuff like the comic book movies, other giant monster movies, sci-fi actioners like that, they all kind of, well, the majority of them fell short compared to -1. So -1 is clearly a cut above, right? In fact, if we were going to an especially pretentious place, I might even go so far as to use the old mantra of Godzilla -1 is not a movie, it is a film. I mean, I find it to be kind of a weird distinction to make, but for some reason that's what catches on. So -1, cut above, because it's got those heavy themes, good storytelling, impressive special effects certainly, but it all comes together to make something that's truly memorable and emotional and thematically rich. Now, Godzilla Kong: The New Empire is clearly going in the exact opposite direction. As of this video's posting, we only have the one trailer for The New Empire, and we have the first wave of Playmates action figures. But we can still tell what kind of movie this is going to be. And clearly, it is not even in the same neighborhood as -1. And that's why I feel that drawing comparisons between them in this particular case wouldn't really be prudent. We can tell how different they are. -1 is, again, very human-driven. It's a historical drama. It's very serious. It's grounded in a certain degree of reality. Whereas The New Empire, at least from what we've seen at this point, it's going for high fantasy. It's going to be more lighthearted. It's going to be more monster-focused. All those other things. Basically the polar opposite of -1. And while sometimes putting polar opposites against each other does make sense, in this case, I just don't see it making much sense. We already know that they're different, so why compare them? Let me put it this way. The New Empire looks like its main goal is to be fun. -1 can be described with many different words, but fun is not one of them. So that alone separates them by a very wide chasm. So, just as I don't think it would be prudent to compare -1 to Godzilla vs. Megalon, I don't think it's prudent to compare The New Empire to -1. I've seen some people saying it looks like it's going to be a Saturday morning cartoon, and they don't always mean that in a derogatory manner, mind you. So, I think the approach we need to take is to say, well, if it's trying to be a Saturday morning cartoon, how good is it at doing that? Is it fun? Does it deliver on the thrills it's promising? Is it satisfying how it weaves through all of the action set pieces and eventually gets to its conclusion? Those are the questions we should be asking, I think. Because obviously that's the direction it's going. Vastly different from -1. Now, who knows? Maybe The New Empire will surprise us. Maybe it actually will wind up being comparable to -1 in various ways. But, if I were a betting man, I wouldn't place too many chips on that particular square. That's just how I'm going to approach it, though. I'm going to try my best to take The New Empire on its own terms, and if it warrants comparison to previous Godzilla movies, it'll have to be the especially campy ones, because Adam Wingard himself has said that those are the biggest influence on this particular film. Comparing it to -1, I mean, of course it's going to be not on the same level as -1. So why reiterate that? -1 is a cut above many, many different films. So I guess you could look at that and say, well, if we're really going to ask the question of which one is better, we already know the answer because it's obvious. The New Empire, therefore, needs to have a new set of questions applied to it that maybe can't be answered right away, not until we've actually seen it for ourselves. But that's how I'm going to approach it. And, well, maybe I'll be the only one, but we'll see. Anyway, just wanted to get that out there for you guys to consider. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. Thank you all for watching. Now be sure to head down to the description to check us out on other platforms, as well as find links to the 5 current books in the Tales from the Omni Vault universe. Again, thank you all, and we'll see you next time.